How did primitive humans successfully cross hundreds of miles of open, terrifying ocean on fragile rafts completely blind, with absolutely no idea if there was land on the other side? The discovery of how our ancient ancestors reached places like Australia reveals a shocking truth about human courage, survival, and a mysterious biological drive that forces us to sail into the unknown. Picture the Earth during the height of the last ice age, roughly 70,000 years ago. Massive glaciers locked up so much water that global sea levels were nearly 400 feet lower than they are today. Because of this, many modern islands were connected by massive land bridges. You could literally walk from Siberia to Alaska, or from mainland Asia to Indonesia. For a long time, scientists assumed that early humans simply walked everywhere. They believed our ancestors slowly migrated across these dry land bridges over thousands of generations, never actually needing to build boats. But then, archaeologists looked at Australia. Even during the absolute lowest sea levels of the Ice Age, Australia was never connected to Asia. It was always separated by a massive, incredibly deep ocean trench known as the Wallace Line. This deep water barrier was so treacherous that ancient Asian animals, like tigers, rhinos, and monkeys, could never cross it. That is exactly why Australian wildlife, like kangaroos and koalas, evolved in total isolation. Yet, human footprints, stone tools, and ancient campfires have been found in Australia dating back at least 65,000 years. This presents a massive historical problem. Early humans could not walk to Australia. They could not swim to Australia. The closest point of land was still separated by a terrifying stretch of open, violent ocean, up to 60 miles wide. Because of the curvature of the Earth, it was physically impossible to stand on the shores of Indonesia and see Australia. Looking out, all they saw was an endless, terrifying horizon of dark water. So, how did a group of primitive hunter-gatherers, armed with nothing but stone tools, cross an ocean they didn't even know had another side? For decades, the scientific community tried to explain this away as an accident. The theory was that a small group of ancient humans was foraging on the beach when a massive tsunami or a freak storm washed them out to sea on floating debris. According to this theory, they just floated aimlessly until they accidentally washed up on the shores of a new continent. It sounds like a neat explanation, but modern science has proven it completely wrong. Recently, researchers used advanced supercomputers to run thousands of complex simulations of the ocean currents in that region. They found that an accidental crossing is virtually impossible. If you just float on a log in those waters, the strong, aggressive currents will simply grab you and sweep you out into the middle of the Indian Ocean to die of dehydration. To actually reach Australia, you cannot just float. You have to steer. You have to actively paddle, fighting against the natural flow of the ocean, maintaining a steady, calculated heading for at least 4 to 7 days straight. Furthermore, geneticists have calculated that to start a healthy, viable population on a new continent, without dying out from inbreeding, you cannot rely on just 3 or 4 accidental drifters. You need a founding population of at least 100 to 200 people. This changes human history forever. It means that 65,000 years ago, ancient humans intentionally built a fleet of watercraft. It means they gathered hundreds of people, packed days' worth of food and fresh water, and deliberately launched themselves into the terrifying void of the open ocean. What did these prehistoric vessels look like? They were not the hollowed-out wooden canoes you might be picturing. Those required more advanced tools that had not been invented yet. Instead, they likely used bamboo. Bamboo grows abundantly in Southeast Asia. It is incredibly strong, and it is naturally hollow, making it extremely buoyant. Ancient engineers would have used tough jungle vines to lash hundreds of giant bamboo stalks together, creating massive, unsinkable pontoon rafts. But building a raft is the easy part. The real mystery is the psychological terror of the voyage. Humans are a terrestrial species. We belong on the dirt. Our brains are hardwired to fear the deep ocean. It is a condition so common today, we actually have a word for it: Thalassophobia. The ocean is an alien, completely hostile environment where we are stripped of all our physical advantages and reduced to prey. Imagine being on one of those bamboo rafts on day 3. The sun is scorching your skin. Your fresh water supply, stored in animal skins, is running dangerously low. Below you, massive prehistoric sharks are circling the bamboo. When the sun goes down, you are plunged into an absolute, suffocating darkness, listening to the violent crash of unseen waves. You have no compass, no maps, and absolutely no guarantee that you aren't just paddling into an endless abyss that will slowly kill you. Modern people panic when their GPS loses signal for 5 minutes on a highway. Our ancestors paddled into the void, relying on something far more profound. They read the natural world like a living map. Even without instruments, ancient mariners were brilliant scientists. They navigated by memorizing the complex rotation of the night stars. During the day, they watched the flight paths of seabirds, knowing that birds fly out to fish in the morning and always return toward land at night. They watched the clouds, knowing that fluffy cumulus clouds tend to pile up stationary over invisible islands. They could even close their eyes and feel the distinct rhythm of the waves bouncing off distant, unseen coastlines. They did not need a map because they felt the ocean through the wood of their rafts. But this still leaves one massive, burning question. Why? If you are living in a lush, tropical jungle with plenty of fruit, fresh water, and game, why would you ever risk your life and the lives of your children to build a raft and paddle into the unknown? What drove them off the beach? Evolutionary psychologists point to a fascinating quirk in human biology. Inside your DNA, there is a specific genetic mutation known as DRD4-7R. It is often nicknamed the wanderlust gene, or the explorer gene. It is heavily linked to dopamine receptors in the brain, and people who carry it have a remarkably high tolerance for risk, novelty, and exploration. In most animal species, if an environment is safe and has enough food, the animals will simply stay there forever. But humans are uniquely restless. Evolution deliberately selected for a small percentage of crazy, restless individuals who look at a terrifying, deadly, endless ocean and think, "I wonder what is over there." That genetic restlessness is the ultimate superpower of our species. It pushed us out of Africa, it pushed us across the deadly ice sheets of Europe, and it pushed those brave mariners onto bamboo rafts to conquer the Pacific. When they finally saw that thin, green line of land appear on the horizon, they did not just discover a new continent. They proved that the human mind could conquer the impossible. They landed on an alien world filled with massive, terrifying megafauna, giant carnivorous kangaroos and monitor lizards the size of crocodiles, and they thrived, building the oldest continuous living culture on the planet. Today we look at modern astronauts wearing titanium suits riding rockets into space as the absolute pinnacle of human exploration. But the most dangerous, consequential, and courageous journey in the history of our species was not made in a spaceship. It was made by a group of terrified, incredibly brave people sitting on a pile of tied-up bamboo, paddling into the absolute unknown simply because they refused to be stopped by the horizon.